And we're back, episode 444, closing in on the 450 mark. I'm Fist Velvet Glove podcast. I'm Trevor, over there in regional Queensland. Scott, the Velvet Glove. How are you, Scott?
Good, thanks, Trevor. G'day, Trevor. G'day, Joe. G'day, listeners. I hope everyone's well.
Hopefully they are. And Joe, the tech guy, of course.
Evening all.
So, yes, we're here. We're going to talk about news and politics and sex and religion. Actually, not much about sex, I don't think. We talked a little bit about last week. Somebody was happy about that. But, yeah, look, what's on the agenda? I think, well, we had the debate between Kamala Harris and Trump and the things that came out of that. Still just lots of US bad behaviour on the planet. See where we end up on different topics, but I think it's one where there's a lot of foreign affairs. Not a lot locally happening, although a tiny bit we'll get to. But, yeah, if you're in the chat room, say hello. If you find a topic boring, remember there are chapters in the audio version of this podcast, so you can look at the chapters and skip around and scoot around and repeat things or skip over things. So, Scott, what did you think of the debate between Donald Trump and Harris and how it all panned out? Any impressions that you had from that?
Only that it wasn't really all that surprising that Donald Trump brought up eating the dogs and eating the cats, because I think the man is an imbecile. And because he's an imbecile, it really wouldn't surprise me that he had someone telling him to actually say it, and he probably thought, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, I'll say that. He's just led by anyone that's got a right-wing base and that type of thing. Now, there was that Loomer, was it? She's got 1.2 million followers on X. So it really wouldn't surprise me that the other Republicans are right. That was possibly her that actually told him to say it.
Well, the first time around we had crazy Steve Bannon was sort of in the wings, and we felt that he was the guy prompting Trump into dark corners.
Apparently, Laura Loomer, conspiracy theorist, is very upset that people are spreading conspiracies that she's in a relationship with Trump.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. So she was in the plane with him the day before, and apparently she...
Hang on. She, who's a 9/11 denier, was on the plane to the 9/11 memorial.
Yeah, a 9/11 denier on the plane to the memorial. Yes.
He took her to the memorial service.
Of course. Yes. Of course.
She actually believes it's an inside job, doesn't she?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. A nasty piece of work. I've got a little clip from her. So let's just, for those who aren't familiar with Laura Loomer, this is one of Trump's key advisors and seemingly the woman behind the...
He wanted to hire her. His advisors said no.
The other crazy advisors said, "No, this one is too crazy."
Yeah, absolutely.
I think they were right based on this little clip here. Anyway, okay, here we go.
So malicious, so disrespectful to Donald Trump and Melania Trump. They've taken it so far. And, if I was a leftist journalist, if I was a Democrat, oh, my God, the media would be up in arms if the Republican media was doing this to a left-wing journalist. Oh, my God, they're misogynist. They're bullying a woman. They're trying to Monica Lewinsky her. They're demonizing her. They're trying to discredit the fact that she's a working woman. I mean, look, I know that Kamala Harris sucked dick to get where she is today, okay? And she had to sleep with Willie Brown in order to get to the top. But some of us women, right, we actually work hard. Some of us women have no desire to have sexual affairs with politicians or men with elite political status to climb the ladder. I know that Kamala Harris can't say the same, but, believe me when I say that that's not me. Or as Kamala Harris likes to say, they ain't like us, right? She ain't like me. I ain't like her. Okay, I don't suck dick to get to the top. That's what Kamala Harris.
Well, she's just weird.
When people talk like that, where she says she doesn't suck dick to get to the top.
The
I
lady
immediately
doth
think
protect too much.
she must be sucking dick to get to the top.
Yeah, exactly.
People who put forward, it's like when you're in business and you meet a new customer or somebody and they tell you, don't worry, I always pay my debts. You'll never have to worry. And it's like, oh no, they're going
Or like
to
Donald
miss
Trump,
a payment.
He's been going on for months about how he wasn't involved in golden showers.
Yes.
You know that he was.
So just the vehement sort of talk like that just makes you think that, okay, probably is guilty. What is it? He doth protest too much or something like that?
The lady doth protest too much.
Yes, the lady doth protest too much.
Yeah,
it.
that's Shakespeare, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, it is Shakespeare. I couldn't tell you what play it's from, but anyway.
Yeah. So Shailene says, I'll never let you down is the one for me. Good to see you there, Shailene.
Hey, Shailene, I'm never going to give you up.
Yeah, that's true. No, when people have to verbalise stuff, but yeah, you have to worry, don't you? So, particularly, Scott, your reaction, you obviously thought that was pretty low blow, fairly nasty work, her commentary there, it seemed.
Oh, it was, yeah. You know, how she actually accused Kamala Harris of sleeping away to the top. Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people have always said that about Maggie Thatcher and all that type of thing, but they're just.
Did they?
Oh, no.
Nancy Reagan was known as the throat.
Oh, was she?
Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently, Margaret Thatcher was quite a how do you say it?
Prude?
No, she gave off a sexual vibe.
Yeah.
Christopher Hitchens would talk about how she gave off a vibe and she spanked him with a magazine on his bum and she and other world leaders who met her and other people said that Margaret Thatcher definitely gave off a womanly vibe, so which you wouldn't suspect from afar.
I just think to myself, this is probably she was the first of a international leader that was a woman. Okay, now you've got to that's probably discounting whatever her name was, Mrs. Gandhi in India and Golda Meir and those sorts of people.
Golda Meir.
But they weren't prime ministers or presidents of a large, powerful country.
Are you doubting this story, Scott?
I am doubting the story. Now, I just think to myself that, yes, she may have given off some sexual vibes, but I don't think she would actually cheat on Dennis, though.
No, not suggesting that. But I'm just suggesting that
she knew how to flirt.
She had a sense of flirtation about her.
Yeah, which is
I'm not saying that she went and did anything, but certainly had that sort of aura about her. Which
that doesn't surprise me.
Right, okay. All right.
You know.
Yeah, but particularly nasty, that Laura Loomer. I mean,
oh God, yes, she's awful.
Yeah, there'll be a bit of a theme here. Actually, I jumped to it now. Well, just while we're on it, Julia Gillard came out and former Labor Prime Minister Julia Gillard's called on the party to never remove its 50% female quota for parliamentary candidates. And I think that's a good thing. But if we're hoping that it lifts the calibre, I don't know that it does. It just seems to me that more and more apparent that just world leaders, it doesn't matter whether they're male or female, there's just a shitty bunch that we're lumbered with, and the system is promoting shitty women as much as men at the moment, unfortunately.
Well, it's all about a desire for power, isn't it?
Yes, and just because your gender may be a female gender doesn't mean that you're necessarily a better politician or leader than male. So in this article I was looking at, say, Condoleezza Rice during the helm of the US-Iraq weapons of mass destruction debacle. Margaret Thatcher, responsible for plenty of bad things. Hillary Clinton sanctioned the murder of Gaddafi. Angela Merkel was crueling the Minsk Accords. So there's plenty of, okay, for Julia Gillard, yes, a 50% quota in Labor is great, but gee, don't have too much hope in that lifting the overall standard, because it seems that the ones we get are still pretty bad. Speaking of,
I don't think that's entirely true. Like Peter Murphy was obviously a very good MP. She was the Labor candidate that died from breast cancer. I can't remember when, but she died a little while ago, and she was she got made quite a name for herself.
look, you can always pick and choose and find good and bad in both, but I'm just saying that it's not necessarily going to lead to any better policy or outcomes. So at least we'll be able to blame women as much as we can blame old men for the predicament we find ourselves in.
Well, that's true.
Have you guys seen much of... Go on.
No, I just thought it was very amusing that when, what was her name? The last former foreign minister, the lady from the Liberal side, what was her name?
Julie Bishop.
Julie Bishop. When she was asked about, does she ever think a successful woman will become leader of the Liberal Party? And she said, oh, I don't know, we'll have to find one first, won't we? And then she just turned around and walked away. I just thought that was very amusing how she actually said, well, I'm a successful woman. Why the hell are you asking me? Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, that was that. Just before we get too far, am I echoing a bit, Joe? Is that what you were saying? You think
just there's some sibilance.
Okay. Maybe I should try... will I try echo cancellation?
Maybe.
See how that goes?
Ooh, that just sounds weird.
That sounds weird. I'll go back.
Yeah.
I'll leave it go. Hey, let's just circle back to Trump. I saw this particular clip and I found it fascinating. So when we're thinking about the debate that was just going on and whether it will change minds, and...
Oh, no, but she was really good at baiting him.
Yes.
I absolutely, exactly. And that was what she actually needed to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
people needed to see what a wild
petulant child he is. Yeah.
Just for a bit of sport, for a bit of fun. Because will it change any minds is the question.
Probably not. Those wedded onto him are going to carry on. But, in terms of, they're saying the last debate got rid of Biden, didn't it? So
yes.
it can have an impact.
Yes. I think the last debate showed that they had a problem where the Democratic supporters were unmotivated because they were going, no, John, I don't think Twitch is going. Sorry. I've got a clip here which I found fascinating about how rusted on the MAGA supporters are and the shameless way that they will switch their story. So this is instructive, this one, and just scary. So I'll play this for a bit.
Do you mind if I ask you who you voted for in the last election?
Trump.
I'm going to guess you voted for Trump.
It says Donald Trump.
Do you mind if I just ask you a few questions about things that Biden has done in his administration, and you can kind of give me your opinion on that? What did you think when Joe Biden suggested that COVID could be cured by shining a bright light inside the body?
It is very sad.
Wait, what happened then?
Do you mind if I ask you who you
I don't
voted
know.
for in
It's
the
not
last
playing
election?
anything.
Trump.
I'm going to guess you
Hopefully
voted for
it runs
Trump.
through.
It says Donald Trump.
Do you mind if I just ask you a few questions about things that Biden has done in his administration, and you can kind of give me your opinion on that? What did you think when Joe Biden suggested that COVID could be cured by shining a bright light inside the body?
Is it playing anything?
Yeah. Can you?
It is very
can't
sad
see
that
anything.
Joe Biden is clearly a dementia patient.
Supposedly hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light.
What do you think about Joe Biden saying that getting through the 80s without getting HIV was his own personal Vietnam?
Again, it's very sad, his mental capacity, and that is a very uneducated statement.
Oh, okay, I'm so sorry. These are not, I got my notes mixed up. Can I ask you this question? Can we start over and me ask you what, okay. What did you think when Donald Trump suggested that COVID could be cured by shining a bright light into the body?
It depends what that technology is.
Okay.
That's a broad spectrum because, you have MRI machines and CT machines and infrared and different things. So it just depends the context of that.
What did you think of Donald Trump saying that getting through the 80s without getting HIV was his own personal Vietnam? Dementia patient?
No, I don't believe that.
There are accusations.
Scott, are you hearing this, or you've?
No, I can't hear a thing.
But Joe, you're hearing it.
Yeah. Try reloading your browser, Scott.
I hope everybody in the chat can hear this. So send us a message if you can't, but it should be coming through loud and clear. It might be just Scott for some reason. I don't know why. But I quite like that one. I like.
John's saying he can hear it.
Okay, excellent. So it's running through. But
Yeah.
she, it's a good premise. This interview, basically saying, "Oh, I've got it wrong. Sorry, I'll just replay it again."
Yes.
So this guy. Okay, so we'll just move on to this guy now.
Cheated on his wife with a porn star after his son was born. And there's actually a paper trail showing he paid the sex worker $130,000 to keep quiet about it.
Well, who did that? Joe
Biden.
And he was making, I think, less than $100,000 a year at that time
That's
as
right.
a congressman. A senator. Now, how does he do that?
You tell me. Would you
You're a
vote for
reporter.
someone that
Of course not.
Okay. So Trump did do that
Trump had a fling with Stormy Daniels.
and paid her $130,000.
Hush money, yes.
And you're voting for him.
I am. My father had affairs too, and I still respect him.
How do you feel about Joe Biden using his bone spurs to dodge the Vietnam draft?
Joe Biden has a problem. He isn't an American. He isn't a patriot.
I'm sorry. I asked you. I said Biden and I meant Trump. So those were things that.
Oh, Trump?
Trump. Yes. Can I ask you the question again with
Yes,
the right
you may.
name? I'm so sorry. How do you feel about Donald Trump using his bone spurs to dodge the Vietnam draft?
My brother-in-law had flat feet. So I'm sure you cannot go into a military zone, a Vietnam zone, or any of the other zones with bad feet.
Sure.
You just can't do the job.
I love that one, Scott. Sorry you missed it all, but
No, it's okay. I've got it
we're
on the end.
essentially. She says, "Yeah, what do you think of Joe Biden dodging the draft because of his flat feet? Bloody coward." And then, it's Trump, shamelessly switching their opinion straight away. There's just, what can you do? What can you do with these people? They're shameless. They just weren't even embarrassed by it. Just away they went with a new story.
I think they assumed that the clips were going to be edited and, they weren't going to be shown side by side.
I know, but not even a shame towards the interviewer to the way they'd flipped. So, yeah. Anyway, that was just instructive, I think, of the state of affairs. And there are a certain category of MAGA supporters that you just cannot shift, obviously. So, yeah. Right. Anything else before we move on from the debate? All good?
There's not much else you can say about it. I mean, it was quite predictable the way Donald Trump was carrying on.
It was funny the way she baited him about the size of his crowds.
Oh, yeah. That was really well done.
And that his rallies were boring. So he couldn't answer the question. He couldn't let that stand unchallenged. So he then just rambled on and proved how boring he was for however long.
The PEP podcast went into detail about the whole thing and was sort of praising Harris for her preparation and her timing, where her statements filled in her 2 minutes of allotted time perfectly. So did you see the whole, she must have been given the questions beforehand, and also she was wearing Bluetooth earrings, not earpods,
because there was nothing in her ears that anybody could see on camera, but they could see her earrings, and there were these magical Bluetooth earrings that look nothing like hers that apparently allow you to have answers fed to you, and therefore she might have been prompted because she wasn't a rambling, incoherent idiot like Trump was.
Yes. One of the other things that they said was that the lectern that they stood at, she had hers slightly smaller than his, so that when they cropped the sort of image in, she wouldn't look small in comparison to the lectern. So to give her a physical presence of an equal size, they made sure that the lectern was a slightly smaller one. So that's good attention to detail to just for the sort of optics of the situation. It's quite clever.
Because apparently they were saying with Clinton, he towered over her.
Right. Yes. Okay.
And was quite a confronting presence when he was doing his usual bullshit.
Yes.
I liked how she just walked up to him and just put her hand out and said, "Oh, I'm Kamala Harris."
Because they'd never physically met before then.
No, they'd never actually met.
Which is fascinating, isn't it? Very interesting.
And apparently he didn't know where to put himself because apparently he's just not used to people coming up and being polite.
Exactly.
So she's been vice president for 3.5 years and she never met the former president in all that time. Is amazing.
He refused to come to the inauguration. He basically just doesn't turn up to anything because generally there are events, deaths, funerals, things like that all the former presidents turn up to, and apparently he just doesn't do those.
Yes, he's got a golf game to go to.
Yeah.
Yep. I've got some golf clubs.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story. If you're ready for something. So for my 60th birthday, little joke here, dear listeners. If you don't want the joke, fast forward 2 minutes. But for my 60th birthday, the kids gave me, some money towards a present, buy a surfboard or golf clubs or whatever. So I decided I was going to buy some golf clubs because my wife plays golf, wants me to play golf with her. So looking online, saw that they were on special at Costco. Do you guys ever go to Costco?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. So I didn't have a membership for Costco, but did my sums, looked at these clubs, thought it's worth paying the extra $65 membership just to get them. Drove all the way out to Ipswich, 35-minute drive, Scott, to get there. And I thought, I better make sure they're on the shelf before I pay for this membership because I don't want to, waste my time unnecessarily because I'm a busy man. Go in the store, see the clubs are there, great. Go back out, sign up for the membership, go back in the store, pick up the clubs, walk out. Quite good customer service there. Like, people are almost cheering you at the door as you walk out. They're like, you're going to have a great time, mate, with those clubs. Good luck, blah, blah, blah. Like, quite a good experience. Drive 35 minutes back home. My wife comes home shortly afterwards and we decide to open up the box and have a look at the clubs. Open the box up. And in the 10-piece set, there were only 5 clubs in the box.
Really?
I was like, shit. Now, God damn it. And we needed to go down the coast, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I need to fix this. I'll drive all the way back to Ipswich, another 35 minutes, sort this out. Drive there, go up to the counter, and they go, "What are you doing back here?" I said, well, this 10-piece set of golf clubs that you sold me, it's only got 5 clubs in it. And they said, that's no good. Let's have a look. Popped it up on the counter, opened the box. Yeah, there's only 5 clubs. What about under this cardboard flap here?
I thought you were going to say that the 5 Ts were the other 5 pieces.
The box had like a false floor.
It's for hiding your drugs in.
And there, sure enough, were the other 5 clubs. And
there you go.
And so I said, okay.
17 minutes and a lesson in humility later.
And jumped in the car and drove another 35 minutes back home. And there's an hour and a half of my life that I'll never get back again. So there's a lesson for you, dear listener.
It's quite good if you're going past either that one or the Caboolture one. Fuel is generally cheaper.
All right.
And if you want some American lunch, they do pizza slices and hot dogs with unlimited refills on your soft drinks.
Oh, God.
For stupid money.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Back to the hardcore news, politics, sex and religion. Bit about Australia before we move on. So we mentioned the other day how our National Anti-Corruption Commission decided not to take action against the main players in the Robodebt scandal. And then shortly afterwards, in the Australian newspaper, Catherine Campbell, in an article with the headline, "Robodebt Reckoning, I was their scapegoat," and basically a sob story from Catherine Campbell saying, "It's terrible what happened to me." This is the sort of shit that happens because that National Anti-Corruption Commission didn't take characters like her into a hearing and a proper corruption hearing and grill her. So this is the sort of shit that happens when you don't do your job properly. Frustrating that she could claim to be the victim. She is playing the victim card in this. Another example of when you have female leadership, it doesn't necessarily mean any better policy. I'm not saying it's worse. I'm just saying it's not any better.
When your department bullies people to death and you then go, "But I'm the victim."
Yep. Just makes me sick. I've got the clip here. Jane Hume on nuclear power speaking on Insiders. This is just embarrassing, but this is the calibre of person that the Liberals are putting up at the moment.
What will your plan for nuclear power cost? Have you worked that out yet?
So the government has, the opposition has been very clear on this one from the beginning, that we believe that in the long term, having nuclear as part of our energy mix is the way to get those emissions back down to net zero emissions, but more importantly, having a reliable and efficient and affordable energy mix.
Okay, but the cost
and that's
is
what
the
nuclear
question?
will be part of that. Well, everywhere around the world, we've seen when nuclear power is part of that mix that energy prices come down. At the moment, Australians are paying around 56 cents per kilowatt hour. In places like Ontario, where nuclear is
There's a lot of
about
other
60%
parts
of the
of the
mix
world that use nuclear than Ontario, and a lot of them have higher prices. I think Quebec next door. But what's the cost going to be of your policy?
Well, hang on. I think the most important thing here, David, is that when nuclear is part of the energy mix, we see energy prices come down. And in places like Ontario, they have 14 cents per kilowatt hour. In Tennessee,
a lot of experts
it's
would
around
challenge that.
18,
I'm just asking about
18 cents per kilowatt hour.
What's the cost going to be, and when are we going to see this?
Well, we'll make our announcement on the cost of our nuclear policy in due course, but in advance of the election. The most important thing here, well, in advance of the election, if the election's
I don't know about you, but when I'm being bullshitted to, I like equal opportunity for both genders to bullshit as, and an equal opportunity bullshitting. Just crap.
Yeah, they're not going to do nuclear. They know they're not going to do nuclear.
Yeah.
This is just bullshit. Distract away from, hey, renewables are cheap. Let's go to renewables. Oh, no, we can't do that.
Yeah. Did I have any more on Trump before I move on?
Yeah, you haven't done the Kiffness yet.
The which one?
The song.
Oh, yes. So, dear listeners, I'm going to play the full bit of this at the end of this episode, I think. But so Trump's line was, they're killing the dogs, they're killing the cats, they're killing the pets of the people who live there.
Yes.
In Springfield. And this guy has done a sort of a bit of a riff on it. I'll play it, and then Joe, you can explain who he is afterwards, maybe. Okay. I'll play a little bit of this. So here we go.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
People of Springfield, please don't something else. People of Springfield, please don't eat my dog. Here's a catalog of other things to eat.
They're eating the dogs.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
They're eating the cats.
Meow, 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 meow.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
They're eating the cats.
Meow, 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 meow.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs.
Oh, it's good. I'll put the full bit at the end of the audio one. But who is that guy, Joe?
So he's known as the Kiffness. He is a South African musician. He apparently had a number of South African charts songs. And then during lockdown, he became famous because he was taking Instagram reels and YouTube clips and of various animals and setting the howls of the animals to music.
Very clever.
Yeah. Very, very catchy songs. Worth checking out his YouTube channel. There's lots of songs on there.
Yeah, that tune has just been running through my head all day from when I got the clip ready this morning. So, yeah, it sticks in. So, right. Let's talk about a few other things. I've been mentioning a lot about US propaganda and how much is going on. And the US Senate just passed a bill, HR 1157. It's called Countering the PRC Malign Influence Fund. Countering the People's Republic of China Malign Influence Fund. And it authorises more than $1.6 billion for the State Department and US aid over the next 5 years to, among other purposes, subsidise media and civil society sources around the world that counter Chinese malign influence. It's essentially $1.6 billion to create propaganda in other countries to counter the Chinese. And, okay, it's up to America to provide a counter-narrative to whatever the Chinese are saying, but we know that just a lot of this will be super secretive stuff and that most people, or a lot of this money will go to groups and nobody will know that they're funded by the US and that they're doing this stuff. So you might remember, dear listener, if you listened to the whole Venezuela episode, that I went on and on about how much money and time is spent by the US in paying off journalists, in owning media groups, and this is the sort of bill that enables that. So $1.6 billion over 5 years for propaganda, which may well be secretive. So, and that's just for anti-China stuff. So that was passed recently. And sanctions, a little bit about that, because I've also, over the years, dear listener, been talking about the US dollar. Scott, are you keeping track at all over BRICS and the move to get away from the US dollar?
No, I haven't really kept a track on it. I just know that it's out there and that they, the BRICS are trading in their own currencies, not the US dollar. So that would mean that Saudi Arabia would be selling their oil in Riyadh, wouldn't it?
Whatever their currency is.
I think they're called reals, aren't they?
Not sure. But essentially places like China, Iran, the Saudis, Russia, doing their trade without US dollars and therefore avoiding US sanctions. And this has been a key to US power essentially since the Second World War. So, well, actually, since the 70s when they dropped the linkage to gold and basically said to the Saudis, you guys can do whatever shit you want to get up to and charge a good price for your oil, but you must sell it in US dollars, and then you're going to accumulate a lot of US dollars, and guess what? it's not like we're going to let you buy lots of US companies or US assets. We'll just let you buy US bonds. So that's been the key to US hegemony. And Donald Trump is aware of the danger of the US dollar falling out of favour.
Wall Street.
Yeah, he's one of the few to talk about it. So this is his reaction to other countries deciding not to use the US dollar in their trade amongst themselves. Here's what he has to say.
And we will keep the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency, and it is currently under major siege. Many countries are leaving the dollar. They're not going to leave the dollar with me. I'll say, you leave the dollar. You're not doing business with the United States because we're going to put 100% tariff on your goods.
I'm very much a traditionalist. I like staying with the dollar. You know that from when I was there. It's make the dollar the choice. I hate when countries go off the dollar. I would not allow countries to go off the dollar because when we lose that standard, that will be like losing a revolutionary war. That will be a hit to our country, just like losing a war. And we can't let that happen. And too many countries now are
Now, you saw the background of that said former President Trump on crypto. He's actually been talking about the US government getting involved in Bitcoin.
Right.
Because, it's important that the US government not be tied to the dollar.
For God's sake. Let's just put crypto aside for one moment. But he is essentially saying, all you other countries, you can't do what you want to. If the UK sells and buys something with Germany, and transactions that were formerly in US dollars, you've got to keep doing it in US dollars. And we're just going to force you to do it. It's just, these guys have such a crazy, shameless power trip about the US controlling everything. So that is, dear listener, one of my pet theories is that the end of the empire is
almost as big a currency and used for international deals as well.
What's that?
The euro has taken on quite a lot of what was historically US dollars.
Yeah, well, it's the loss of that US dollar power that is going to be the final. That's really going to set the US back. So that's happening more and more. And there's something like nearly 100 countries interested in joining BRICS. And so there's a lot of interest in that group. So that will cause the downfall of the American empire eventually, will be the loss of the US dollar as the default currency. Oh, what else have they been up to? They just stole Maduro's plane. President of Venezuela, his plane was in the Dominican Republic. So US officials just jumped on board and stole it and flew it back to America. Because that's what you do. But,
They just pinched it, did they?
Yes. Just stole it. Because they said that it was against their sanctions. So somehow Maduro had convinced somebody to sell this plane to him, and the US said, well, that's against our sanctions, so we're not allowing that to happen. We're just confiscating it. But really it's nothing in the scheme of things because they've previously stolen Venezuela's gold reserves and their oil refinery company, Citgo. So it's just a small matter in the scheme of things. Here's an interesting one, Scott. The US military sometimes put things out to tender. They're offering a contract for research. It's always good to have some research done on the face of it. Unfortunately, the research that the US military has requested is on the effects of nuclear weapons on agricultural systems. And the modelling that they particularly are interested in is it must include former Eastern Bloc countries and regions beyond Eastern Europe and Western Russia. So that is the specific research they want done on the effect of nuclear weapons openly, shamelessly tendering for that research.
So they must be planning on
a nuke. Well, no, but maybe they're concerned that a former Soviet nuke goes off and...
Yes, inadvertently self-harms.
But if you've seen the quality of some of their other maintenance...
Yes. Joe, you should be working for the US military with that sort of excuse making. Yeah.
It's kind of, I mean, I wouldn't read anything into it because the US have war plans to invade Britain, any country, they have a war plan for it. Yes. They're just arse covering.
Asking for the effects of nuclear weapons on agricultural systems in the Eastern Bloc is really saying what will happen to their agriculture if we bomb them. Isn't that really what it's about?
I'm sure they've got the same for the US as well. What happens if we get bombed?
Yeah, well, that's okay.
or what happens if Russia and China get into a shooting war?
Do you know what, Joe? I reckon they're starting to talk about strategic nuclear bombings, like just a small-scale nuclear war is what you tend to hear about a little bit now.
Who's talking about strategic nukes? I mean, I know the Russians have threatened them all the time, but...
The Americans even have strategic nukes? Battlefield nukes?
I do believe they've got... I think they do have battlefield nukes, and they've also got... Now, I've saw some pictures of this, so don't take this with a huge grain of salt. There was actually a artillery piece that they fired a small nuclear weapon out of. It flew over, and then you ended up with a mushroom cloud. It was a very small mushroom cloud, but it was a artillery unit that fired a nuclear weapon. So that was something the Yanks actually did back when they still had atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons and that type of thing.
Yeah, and then they discovered that the safe range was almost basically further than the artillery piece could fire.
Absolutely. So they, they've probably still got them, and they've got, they've got safety and that sort of thing. That means that the entire artillery crew has to wear a nuclear protective stuff.
So this is like a hand grenade, so powerful that it blows up anything within throwing range distance.
Basically, yes. Which is why they abandoned it. They developed it and then abandoned it because it was too bloody dangerous.
Yeah. Yep. So, look, we've just rolled over another anniversary of 9/11. And I don't know about you, but I spend a little bit of time on Twitter these days. And fortunately, I use Twitter lists, so I'm not looking at the open Twitter sphere. But if I click on the wrong tab and end up in the open Twitter sphere, so many conspiracy theorists arguing that the towers were blown up by bombs rather than by planes. It's scary.
Well, jet fuel doesn't burn at the temperature to melt steel.
Yeah, all that stuff is going on in there. What a shit show that is in there. And of course, on that open tab, there's always at the top Elon Musk.
Of course.
Who is promoting Trump these days.
Yeah.
Like he's basically saying, what is he saying? Things like, I've never been materially...
They're eating the dogs.
Yes. He says, I've never been... This is Musk says, I've never been materially active in politics before, but this time I think civilization as we know it is on the line. If we want to preserve freedom and a meritocracy in America, then Trump must win.
He doesn't believe in freedom or a meritocracy.
No.
Famously.
Yeah, so that's what Musk is doing on Trump. And I think Trump has actually talked about Musk being appointed as some sort of czar for improving efficiency in the public service.
Probably. Given the way he's fucked up Twitter.
Yeah. So, yeah, another 9/11 anniversary has rolled by. Of course, we've got to remember that this all then led to various invasions by America. And you have to ask, well, what was the connection between the bombing of the buildings, or not the bombing, sorry, the planes flying into the buildings and the subsequent wars that were conducted? And this is a General Wesley Clark retired 4-star U.S. Army general. He was the supreme Allied commander of NATO during the 1999 war on Yugoslavia. So a 4-star Army general. And this is what he had to say about what was going on in the corridors of power just after 9/11.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, don't show it to me." And I saw him a year or so ago, and I said, "You remember that?" He said, "Sir, I didn't show you that memo. I didn't show it to you."
Scott, they were just looking for excuses to drop bombs, like they still are.
It's
just
one of those things. Had they not have taken their eye off the main goal, which was to deal with Afghanistan, which is to deal with the Taliban, they would have actually got bin Laden fairly quickly. They would have executed him and everything else. It would have been over. But they got distracted on this Iraq sideshow. They went and invaded that country, which there was no reason to invade them. Because Saddam was never a country that was good for the Al-Qaeda or anywhere else. It's just it was a thing that they actually said. I had heard somewhere before that one of them was actually asked about a war in Afghanistan, and they said, "Well, there's no point in bombing that. They're already in the Stone Ages." They had to look for something that was a little more sophisticated, so they came up with Iraq, and they said, "Well, let's go in there." And I just think it was George W. wanted to do what his old man didn't do.
Now, last week, you were sort of thinking that Kamala Harris was a bit more not so happy with the Israelis over what they're doing in Gaza.
Yeah, that was part of it.
Yeah. So I've just got 2 clips of where Harris is talking about Israel. So this was her at the convention.
Let me be clear. I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on our...
So that sounded pretty forceful in her support.
Yeah, I just think she was actually saying it anyway.
And just,
I really wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't actually change the American line on that. I just thought that she had said some stuff that was a little more not pro-Palestinian, but actually saying, you've got to actually stop shooting. And she hasn't actually linked it and said, well, if you don't stop shooting, I'm going to stop delivering arms to you or anything else.
No, she simply said there has to be a ceasefire, but she hasn't said anything about doing stuff to make that happen.
No, I know that.
So,
but it is preferable to what Biden had been saying.
Well, he was probably saying that there has to be a ceasefire, but he just wasn't going to do anything about it either. And at the same time saying...
He didn't actually say there had to be a ceasefire. He said, we've got to have
one.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, so you should have played that long, Trev. I don't know what that meant. Anyway, where were we? Kamala Harris, I think, fairly bullish on supporting Israel, not expecting any major changes there. Going around the world, here's an interesting one, Scott and Joe. Sweden is going to offer migrants $34,000 to go home. So a right-wing government in Sweden and they've had to come into a coalition with a far-right party, and that's the latest policy coming out of Sweden. So I don't know where a migrant comes from, but if you'd had $34,000 in a poor country, you could get a fair way along with that. So, yeah. John says she added a bit more to what she was saying. Okay. John, are you suggesting that she was going to do something about Israel? Because I'll play another clip before I move on. Back to Harris in an interview. Here's the longer one.
President Biden has tried unsuccessfully to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. He's been doing it for months and months, along with you. Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change. But let's take a step back. October 7, 1,200 people were massacred. Many young people who were simply attending a music festival. Women were horribly raped. As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. And we have got to get a deal done. We were in Doha. We have to get a deal done. This war must end.
In the meantime,
and we must get a deal that is about getting the hostages out. I've met with the families of the American hostages. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
But no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done. When you look at the significance of this to the families, to the people who are living in that region, a deal is not only the right thing to do to end this war, but will unlock so much of what must happen next. I remain committed since I've been on October 8 to what we must do to work toward a two-state solution, where Israel is secure and in equal measure, the Palestinians have security and self-determination.
In other words, she's not going to do anything.
The Jewish lobby is too strong in America.
She was asked, what are you going to do different to Joe Biden? Nothing. Are you going to stop supply of arms? No. Israel's got the right to defend itself. We must have a ceasefire, is all she could say. Well, that's it. Well, so, John, I don't know what she might have said in some other clip. I haven't intentionally cut anything out from what I've seen, but I don't think she's going to make any difference at all to that. I hope to be surprised pleasantly, but don't think so. So, yeah. What else have we got here? I think the rest of the ones are a little bit too long. I came across, I was telling the guys earlier, dear listener, it's an AI thing called Notebook LM. And basically, imagine you have written a 500-word essay on something. You can give this essay to this AI program and it will construct a little mini podcast of two people talking about the essay. So this is designed for people who don't like reading and want stuff read to them or talked about in an entertaining way. And anyway, I had just in my notes a little summary I'd made about my views on foreign affairs, and I gave it to this AI program, and I made all sorts of assertions and predictions, and as you can imagine, in this thing. And pretty much they talked about them all as being, oh, yes, that's an interesting idea, or yeah, that's a useful point, or, you know, toing and froing over it. And the one bit in there I had put about if the US loses power and there's no longer military support for Israel, then the Arab states might enter and militarily wipe Israel out. And they spent an enormous amount of time in this pseudo podcast talking about how that was an inflammatory statement and people should be really careful about making such statements, and it's not necessarily a view that anybody should endorse, and like really put all these caveats on it. That was quite extraordinary. I think I'm going to put a little bonus episode in at some stage in the next week where I'll read out my little essay and then I'll play this pseudo sort of podcast episode. And it's just interesting the way that AI has changed the intent and tried to change the meaning of what I was saying. And
yeah, I mean, it depends what it was trained on.
Yes.
So it was trained on a lot of information that hedged its bet, but also they put up guardrails, and so
Yes.
it can be literally
Indeed.
told to do this or to not do that.
And so I guess where I'm heading to is as mainstream media disappears over time and we've just got independent sort of podcasters and whatnot operating, more and more as people use AI to create stuff, there's the risk that the people who make these AI software programs are going to tailor it to colour the material in a certain way. And so we'll still be influenced by powerful forces if independent media allows these things to massage their
This
content.
has been the thing about ChatGPT since the beginning, was right wing saying, oh, it's told to do this and it's told not to, you know, it's got a left wing slant on it.
Yes.
Has long been an argument of the right wing since ChatGPT came out. You know, basically complaining that they couldn't get it to say racist things or whatever it was they wanted it to do.
Yes.
So they then produced jailbroken versions that didn't have any of the guardrails up, and it becomes a raging fascist within about 3 weeks.
Yep. Yeah. So if you're not listening to the, if you're not getting the audio podcast, please do, and you'll hear it at some stage over the next week where I'll slip it in as some sort of bonus episode. But I found it very interesting. So, yeah. Right, gentlemen. Well, I've got to get going. Anything else you guys need to add, or we're ready to go?
No, I'm ready to go.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Thank you in the chat room to John and to who else has been in there? I know Alison appeared at one stage, and Don Tuvey and John was really getting into it, weren't you? And Shay was there at one point. So thanks for being in the chat room. We'll be back next week. Bye for now.
And it's good night.